All right, so we are in our new recording. Hopefully this is working exactly like I want it to. So let's take a look at our assignment for week one. We're going to be creating a desktop wallpaper design. So kind of like your desktop on your computer. I don't even know what I have on my computer right now. Let's take a look. It's probably some really, yeah, there we go. I was gonna say, it's probably some really basic thing that came with my computer. I always have so many things open that I never see my desktop. So there it is. So we're going to be creating a desktop wallpaper design, which is fun. That's a fun assignment. So you'll be using the design tools in Photoshop to do this. So we only have a couple of requirements, which is cool because you can kind of have at it for this week. And this is really an assignment to kind of get you familiar with Photoshop and get you just a little bit more comfortable in Photoshop using the different tools, which is, which is great. So it must be in color. So no black and white designs. It should be 4 inches high by 9 inches wide, and you're going to submit a compressed file, which is a JPEG, and also you're going to submit your native file, which is a PSD, and that's a Photoshop document, to the Dropbox, which is the submit assignment. Note, and this is a big note, always keep your native file formats. Always keep them. So you can go back in and edit. Once you have flattened something to a JPEG, you've really lost a lot of your editing capabilities. It's just one flattened picture, just like this. This is one flattened JPEG picture. But if I had the PSD file for this, I could select one. Maybe I can change the font. I can change the type. I can change all of these things. Once it's flattened, I'm really just kind of stuck with what I've got. So have fun with this week. And here is a little tutorial on designing a Photoshop wallpaper. So you can read over this. Ooh, Windows 7, this is old. You can use some patterns, and I'm going to show you, I was going to say this is old. You can make a futuristic 2011 wallpaper. Woohoo, 2011, all right. Or you can make a futuristic 2018. We are going into New Year's Day, so if you're looking for some inspiration, you can represent Apple with their old logo, because that's definitely their old logo. You can create a simple but creative graphic typographical wallpaper. StarCraft 2, that's old. Yeah, so there's, it's a good read to kind of show you like a couple of different things that you can do. But it is kind of funny how old this tutorial is. So basically, have fun with this week. And I'm going to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my own demo, and I'm going to make my own wallpaper, just so that way I can show you guys the program, and I can show you how to get yourself started and the tools and everything else. So why don't we hop over into Photoshop. Now you will notice I have Adobe Photoshop CC 2018 running on my machine. That was the latest update from Adobe, which, why is it my Creative Suite? Here it is. This is how you see your Creative Suite. Right here through this icon, it looks like kind of like the number 8 laying on its side. So when you go in, you have your home area, which kind of tells you what's going on. You have your apps, so you can see if anything needs to be updated. It'll tell you if there's an update. You'll notice that there's some that I just haven't installed yet on my machine. I have a lot of them installed, however, right now. Then you have some assets. You can get fonts from Adobe to show up. I'll show you that. You can upload files to your Creative Cloud. You can shop for things in the Adobe Market, download different templates and things. You can get 10 free Adobe stock images, but you have to sign up, which is kind of a bummer. And it's like a monthly subscription. So I never do things like that because I always know that I will forget to cancel it, and then they're gonna charge me. You can access your own Behance work, actually I can show you some of my Photoshop stuff that I have done. So my friend took this picture of her daughter in her little mermaid outfit on the beach down in Florida, and she wanted her arm taken out and all of these people that she didn't know taken out. So here it is. I photoshopped that for her, and I kind of color corrected a little bit. You'll notice her daughter was a little bit dark, so I color corrected her, and I took her out, her out, and all the other people out. I drew in the sand. So that's something that you can do in Photoshop. I added this sticker to be laid down flat on the countertop next to the people who are looking at their smartphone and drinking fancy coffee. This was a project that somebody had asked me to do. I added this sticker to here. And I added this table tent and put it on the table right there. Also added this one hanging from this awful looking lamp, but they picked the photos of me. This one was kind of funny. She was holding up the display, and so they wanted me to take her out and crop it. So I did that. I added in some more paper towels underneath, and I added some more paper towels over here, and I took her out. I also added their logo, or a light bulb laying down on the display, and their logo to the top. You can see how that wasn't there, so add a little bit of perspective. I had to change out, they took pictures with a 60-watt light bulb box, and they wanted all their different light bulb boxes, so I had to add all of their different light bulb boxes in. Same thing for this one. So there's a lot, like sometimes, this is some of the basic Photoshop work that you might do for clients, which is why it's important to kind of understand this program. It's really subtle stuff, but it helps them out. They don't have to have another photo shoot just to show the 75-watt light bulb or the 60-watt light bulb. It saves them a ton of money to just have me Photoshop in the light bulb boxes. So again, it started out as 100-watt. I changed it to 75 and then to 60. I had to make this in Photoshop, this mocked up version of their light bulb display, and edit all of the images on it. And again, they took a picture of this one, but they didn't like how it looked, so I turned it into this for them in Photoshop. Looks a little bit more professional, not as dark, and laid out a little bit better. I made them these in Photoshop. So that's some of the stuff that I've done in Photoshop, which is kind of where I'm coming from in the program. So let's hop in, and we need this to be, all right, so we need this to be 4 inches high by 9 inches wide. So I am going to go up to File, New, because I want to make a new document. And this is kind of new. It used to just open up this panel right here, which let you just create the size that you want. And I think that they gave you all of these options now, and it's a little bit overwhelming when you first come in. And when they first changed it, I was kind of like, what is this? So it may have defaulted to pixels. So you always want to make sure you change it to inches if you need something in inches. So again, I need it to be 9 inches wide by 4 inches high. You should set your resolution to 300. That's probably a good resolution to work in, because if you need to save it for web, you can always go down. The thing with resolution is you can always go down. Like, so I can always save something down to 72 DPI. But if I start at 72 DPI, I can't bring it up to 300 DPI. It doesn't work that way. So you always want to err on the side of you know, having too many pixels and bringing it down than not having enough. And 300 pixels is usually what things are required for print. So it's kind of a good, you know, kind of a good baseline of where to start at. Because this is being shown on a screen, it's a desktop, I'm going to leave this in RGB mode because our screens display at RGB. If I was sending something to print, it would need to be at CMYK because printers need a CMYK breakdown, but screens are viewed in RGB mode. You can leave it at 8-bit. I'm going to change the background to transparent because I like to work that way. Some people like to work on a white background, and that's completely fine. I prefer to work on a transparent background. And then there's some advanced options, which you don't really need to get into, just color profiles and things like that. You can leave that alone. And hit create. And you'll notice you have a couple of different options of how you want to set up your display. This is the Essentials display. Close that out. Which I've honestly, like, I've made a mess of because I keep moving things around. Then you have a 3D display, which if you're working in 3D, you have a graphic and web display, which I kind of like this display, honestly. It's going to default you probably to Essentials when you first go in. It always seems to default me there. I like to work in graphic and web. The reason why is this setup is kind of the way Photoshop was a couple of years ago. It just defaulted to this setup. So for me, it's just more what I'm used to. So if you like to work in the Essentials layout and you're like, well, that's what I like, it's really your preference, how you want to set up your station. So you'll notice if you are like me, if you're in graphic and web, you have your character, which is where you can, you know, select a font, which is cool. Paragraphs, you can change it left justified, center, right justified. You can move things, bump things over. It kind of shows you what each option does, like add some space at the top of your paragraph, add some space at the bottom of your paragraph. Glyphs, which are these special characters, those are there. Then you have a properties panel, which you don't really need to get into, a libraries panel. The libraries are your CC libraries, which are located, they're called libraries in Photoshop. Here's my problem with Adobe. And I love Adobe, but they tend to do some stupid things, if I can say so myself. In Photoshop, they call them libraries. In other programs, they call them CC libraries because libraries mean something else. It's like Adobe. They're all your programs. Be consistent across all of your programs and call everything the same thing. So you'll probably end up running into that where you're like, do I need my library or do I need my CC library? And you know, you'll figure it out eventually. But what you can do is you can actually save some color schemes. You can create a new library. So I'm going to create a new one now for DES 104. I can drag and drop things in here. So I just have them right at my fingertips, which is great. And then your layers panel. So in Photoshop, we tend to work in layers, and we tend to, you know, build things, put certain things on certain layers, so that way, you know, you can turn layers on and off. You can keep things separated that way. It makes things a little bit more organized. And I also like to, if you double click, you can name your layers. So you can name it, you know, your first layer would probably be your background. So you can name that layer background. If you want to make a new layer, you go to this piece of paper. It looks like a piece of paper with a fold. And if you hover, you can kind of see that it tells you what each option does. It gives you a key to what it does. So you can create a new layer just by clicking. If you want to delete a layer, you just hit the trash can and it'll say, do you want to delete this layer? Yes. So the same thing with your tools. If you hover, in Photoshop 8, it actually gives you a little movie that it plays on what each tool does, which is cool for you guys because you're new to the program. It kind of drives me a little bit bonkers. I'm always like, oh, was that what I wanted to do? And then I'm hovering, and then I realize it's playing a movie for me, and it throws me all off. And you can go into your preferences and set up units and rulers. It might default to pixels on you. I like to change it to inches just because for me, I'm like, okay, that makes sense measurement-wise. Pixels do not make sense to me. So if you go into Photoshop preferences, you can go to units and rulers. You can fix that. If you're like me and you're like, why isn't this in inches? So again, we have all of these different tools. So let's just kind of learn the tools by making a desktop wallpaper. So what do I want to put on my wallpaper? Maybe, you know what? I'm gonna make a wallpaper for my computer with a picture of my daughter. So let me open up, go in and grab a picture I took of her today. And here's one thing you can do. So, like I told you, I'm organized. So you can drag your JPEG and plop it right on top of the Photoshop icon, and it will open it up. Oh, that wasn't the one I wanted to do. Or there we go. And it'll open it right up for you. If I will give you a hint on this, if you double click when you first get your Mac on a JPEG, it may open up the preview program because the Mac OS defaults to have JPEGs open up in that preview program, not to have them open up in Photoshop because not everybody has Photoshop. So what you can do to fix that is you can right click and go to open with, and you can set Adobe Photoshop as the default out of all the options there. And so you might have to navigate to other, and it'll pop open your applications the first time you do it. But then every time you double click on the JPEGs, it will open up in Photoshop for you. So just a little trick to kind of save your sanity, because after 10 times of it opening up in the wrong program, it'll probably drive you bonkers like it does for me. So every single time I get a new computer, I'm like, oh, need to fix that. I need to make sure it opens up in Photoshop. All right, so you'll notice that I have over here in this tab, this is my, my document that I made, but when I opened up my JPEG, it opened it up in a new tab. So how do I get this over to here? There's a couple of different ways that you can do this. First way, I can do a select all, and you'll notice how it puts like the marching ants. We used to call them the marching ants, but it's a bounding box around the entire image. And I can do edit, copy, and then come over here, and I can do edit, paste, and bring it in, and it's way bigger than the document I just made. So we can fix that. Or, let me just undo that. Oh, history, new, there we go. Or what I can do is I can go up into Window, Arrange, and I can tile all vertically. So what it's going to do is it's going to put these side by side next to each other. So with my Move tool, which is the tool that kind of defaults, see, move, I can grab her and drag her and let go and plop her right onto the document that I'm working on, and then just kind of close her out. And because I didn't do any changes to that JPEG, it didn't ask me if I wanted to save it. So there's two ways that you can move some images over. Here's another trick. Make sure that you are saving and saving often. So Oh, it doesn't tell you how to name your file. This is how we are going to name these files. So we're going to do a file, save as. And again, I'm going to go over into my DES 104 file, week 1, assignment, and I'm going to name this DES 104 underscore. My first initial, my last name, and then assignment 1.psd. So I'll leave that right here for you. And I'll copy that and I'll put it in the slideshow for you. So that way you guys can see that. So first initial, last name. There you go, assignment 1, PSD, and .jpeg as well. So that way you guys know how to save that. And I'm gonna hit save. All right, so before we get started, she's really, really big, and I need her to be scaled down a little bit to fit a little bit better into my my 9-inch by 4-inch space. So I'm going to go into Edit, Transform, and I can go to Scale, or I can go to Free Transform. So I want to show you this with Free Transform, because even though I need to scale her down, I kind of want to show you something that you really should learn right off the bat, and that's to hold down the Shift key to scale something proportionally. So what do I mean by that? So I want to zoom out, so I'm going to hold down Command and then the minus, and that's going to pop me out so I can see my bounding boxes. So you'll notice that before I couldn't see where those bounding boxes were, so you might have to hit Command minus until you get that to zoom out a little bit on the screen. So if I didn't hold down Shift and I just dragged the corner of this box over here, and I dragged her over here, she's really, see how skewed she is? I can tell you that my daughter does not look like that. So up here in history, I'm gonna go back to, I'm gonna hit escape, and I could go back if I hit enter, but I'm going to hold down Shift, and you'll notice that when I scale her now, she's scaling nice and proportionally. So all of her proportions are correct. There we go. Another way that you can do it is up here in the toolbar. Once you're in that transform tool, you can lock your width and height, and that'll keep it, and then you don't have to hold down Shift, and that'll scale it proportionally as well. So I'm gonna kind of move her where I want her to go, and I'm gonna hit enter. When I hit enter, that is going to add that transformation to this photo. So there we are. So there she is. But I kind of want to add some other stuff. I mean, that's great that, you know, I could just put her right on my desktop like that and I'd be completely fine with it looking at her face all day. But I want to add some text. So I'm going to go to the text tool, which is the big letter T, and I'm just going to click, and it's going to default to some really weird font, I'm sure. But let's say that I don't like the fonts that came with my machine. Adobe has this program called Typekit, so you can click on the TK to show what fonts from Typekit you might have there if you've already downloaded some. And if not, you can go to Add Fonts from Typekit. So you click on the little Typekit icon right there, and it's going to open it up in a browser window for you. And what that will do is that will allow you to pick a font. So let's take like a quick 5-minute break right now. I just need to run upstairs and put my daughter down, and I'll come back and then we'll jump back in. So if you guys don't mind just taking a quick 5-minute break, it's 7:21 my time. I'll probably be back down here by 7:25 my time. All right, and sorry about that. If you guys are back, I'm back, so I'll hop back in. And hopefully, let me get rid of Zoom out of here. All over the screen. All right, so so we were adding fonts from Typekit. So basically, Typekit's really cool because you can look for sans serif fonts, you can look for serif fonts, you can put in some type to see, we call her pumpkin pie, different fonts that you might like, and then you can favorite them and you can add them. So it says that there's 2 fonts in your plan, or you can buy them. 5 fonts in your plan. This one's cute. 8 fonts in your plan. And so you'll just click on the font that you like. And take a moment. A lot of times when you're running so many different things on the internet, it's like, how many resources do you think I have? And I think I've already synced this font, so that could be why. There we go. So you'll sync it to your machine, and it'll show up eventually in your Creative Cloud under your Assets, Fonts, and then it will show up in Photoshop. It does take a couple of minutes, so if it doesn't show up immediately, don't worry. It just sometimes it takes a couple of minutes. So what was that called? Hatch. And then you can find it, just kind of type in the character, under character, Hatch, here we go. I'm gonna use bold. Now let's say I want my type to be the same exact color as her ribbon. What I can do is I can click right here under color, and I can either pick a color in the color picker, but when I come off the color picker, see how it gives me the eyedropper? I can go right over to her bow there, select that color, and hit OK. And now I can type in that color. And just bring it down. You can change the font size right in here, or you can use Shift, Command, and the comma, and that makes your font smaller. And then the period, Shift, Command, period, makes it bigger. Little quickie tip for you. So let's say, all right, so I've got pumpkin pie right there. And maybe, let me make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to bring her down, again with the move tool, bring her down just a little. Maybe I want it, whoops, it to look like her head is in front of the word pumpkin. So what I can do is I can erase parts of my letters, but I can't erase them right now while they're still typed. So I need to, with this layer, see how it made it its own layer? Anytime that you touch the text tool to your image, it's going to create a new layer for you. And anytime you drag something on, it's going to create a new layer for you. So I have my baby layer. This is a layer 3 type where I didn't even put anything on it, so I'm just gonna delete that because it's just a random layer that I don't really need there. And then I've got my pumpkin pie layer. So I don't want this to be type anymore. But in case if I change my mind, which I'm known to do, I'm going to drag this layer right here. I'm going to hold on to it and drag it on top of the new layer tool. I'm going to make a copy of it. And I'm going to, with that copy, I'm going to go up into Edit. Whoops, sorry, Layer. Rasterize, Type. Because I want to turn this type into a picture so I can erase part of it. So you'll notice how it doesn't have that T anymore. It just looks like the same as any of my other layers. And then I want to turn off my type layer so I don't see it, but I don't want to delete it just in case if I need it. So I'm going to click on the little eyeball right here, which is going to turn it off. And you won't really be able to tell. You can if I do this one. And now what I can do is I can start to erase parts of this layer right here. Make sure you're always on the right layer. So that way her head is popping up around the type. So I'm going to zoom in again with my magnifying tool. And it's a little bit difficult to see where her head might lie. So I have a little trick for that. With this layer, the pumpkin pie layer selected, I'm going to change the opacity of it to 40%. So now I can kind of see through it. So I can see where I need to erase. So I'll hit enter to take on that change. And I want to go over to my eraser tool, just right here. And it's probably going to default to some random size for you. So if you need it to be a little bit bigger, if you click up here, you can change the size with this slider and then the hardness. So what the hardness does is, all right, like here's it with hardness 100. You might just need to see that. See how it makes a nice crisp erase? If I change the hardness to 0, it's very feathery. See how feathery it is? It's not a nice erase, which that might work because of the hair. I should probably have it at 0 where the edges of her hair are because I don't want it to be too hard. But then would I want to delete out the rest of it? There we go. Change it back to 100 and just kind of erase. There we go. Just gonna erase those letters. And then again, I'm right near where the hairline is. And I erased too much right there. Oh no, what do I do? Well, I can do a Command Z, but that only brings me back one step. This is where the history panel comes into play. So I can go back through my history until I get to the step that I want to go back to. So I'm going to go back 3 erasers. I'm going to try again. There we go. So that way I can stop myself before I get too close to the edge and change that hardness back to 0. Do some wispy. And I'll do the same thing for the bunny. And the bunny isn't hair, but he's kind of got some fuzz. So I'll probably change the hardness to 85%. There we go. Perfect. And zoom out. And I'm going to turn that opacity back up to 100. And there, now it looks like she's sitting in front of the words pumpkin pie. Now, what if I want to take out this wall over here? I can do that. I can take out this wall. I want to select it though. So there's a couple of different ways I could do that. I could select it with the lasso tool. This would probably be a good tool to use. And I can kind of draw my selection around the wall. Or I can use the pen tool, but that's a little bit advanced for right now. If it was a complete square, I could use the square tool. Why am I not getting the other options? Hold on one second. Back to essentials. All right, that's weird. You might need to get into, if you're not seeing the options, you might need to get into essentials. I was like, where did the rest of my options go? Which is going to change over here, which is why I don't like the essentials. Let me see. Window. If you need to do this and then you're wondering where things went, if you go to window, you can open up your layers palette again and just kind of put it over here. Oh, not there. There we go. Layers. What else was I missing? My type probably. Your type is under character. There we go. Paragraph. That'll get me through. All right. So I'm going to use the lasso tool, but I'm actually going to use the polygon lasso tool because I just like that tool a little bit better. So I'm going to press Command plus and I'm going to manually zoom in. And then I'm going to press the space key, and that kind of, see how I'm on the lasso tool, but if I press the space key, I get the hand. That's why I find the space key to be super, super awesome. And then I can position where I need, let go of space, and I'm back on the lasso tool. So I want to make sure that I'm selecting the correct layer. So I'm going to make sure I go back to that baby layer. And I'm going to start right down here at the corner. And you'll notice how it's kind of giving me this line. That's going to be your selection. So I'm going to click and pull, click, 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 all the way. And then I need to pull this picture down a little bit. Again, hand the space bar and pull. And select, and then, oh no, I can't see around the word pumpkin pie. So I'm going to go over, and you'll notice it's going to, come on. Command Z. Where's my history? Window. Escape, escape. All right, I'm going to have to do that over. Hold on. Window. History. There you are. In alphabetical order. All right, I'm going to turn off that layer so I can see better. Sometimes it's good to be kind of, sometimes the lasso, it won't let you go over and select things in your layers. It'll just click, click, click along the way. So you might want to kind of look at where it is that you need to select and make sure there's nothing in the way, other layers. So turning that off helps. So we'll try that again. Select, select. Kind of clicking through my selection. And sometimes this is my little trick for this. When I get to an edge and I need to go over, I kind of go really outside of the edge because I don't want to leave any rogue pixels that weren't selected over here, like one little piece of the corner or something. So I kind of exaggerate myself off of the edges. Kind of something that I've learned in the past. All right. So I'm going to select the baby layer, and I have that selected, and I can either delete it, which takes it out completely, or maybe I'm not quite sure if I'm going to like what I do or if I want to leave the wall. So I can make a new layer up here, and I can then fill this selection with something. So I can fill it with a color. I can fill it with a pattern. It's really, there's a lot of different things that I can do here. So I'm going to go up into Edit, Fill, and I can fill it with the foreground color, which happens to be some weird blue color I have, the background color, which happens to be white. If I click on color, it'll let me select a color, and again, when I come off, I can kind of eyedrop something, and if I want to select something over here, I can zoom out by just saying Command minus, and again, I could do something like select her bow, or select maybe the silver of the bunny. And you'll notice where it says new, that's what you're selecting. So you can kind of, maybe I'll do that. Okay. And then I could do I want it to be normal, dissolved, behind? You can kind of play around with these and see the different options. Opacity is how dark you want it to be. 100% means it's going to fill it 100% with that color. If you did something like 40%, it's kind of like you put a very thin layer of paint on something and the background is showing through. That's kind of how I think of opacity. So I'm going to leave it at 100 and normal, and I'm going to hit OK. So I've got that there. And I'm going to name this old wall. Just so I name things weird things, but in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, that's where the wall used to be. But what if I also want to do a pattern on top of this? I can do that. So I'm going to use my magic wand tool, which I gotta just find it here. Where is it? It's W. There we go. Okay. And it, like I said, it's going to default to that quick selection tool. I like it as just a regular old magic wand tool. They changed the icons, so when I'm looking sometimes, I'm like, wait a minute, what is that? They just changed the icons in 2018, which again, Adobe, why do you do things like that? For people like me who have been working in the program forever and everything looks different. All right, so I'm going to select the gray. By just clicking on that gray, it selects it because it's all one fill color. And again, I'm going to go up into Edit, Fill, and I'm going to select, we'll select pattern. Now, I have a couple of patterns that I've preloaded in here that I can use, and I'll kind of show you this. Oh, I'm sorry. No, you can't. Gohan, who comes to all of my lectures, will sometimes just want to, play with a squeaky toy. So I have this one in here right now that's called Regal. I'm going to use that. I'm going to hit OK. If you'll notice that it added kind of like a patterned wallpaper back there. So that's a little bit better than just that plain old gray. But you may be wondering, how do you get that pattern in there? That's pretty cool. And I will show you. So there is a website that is called subtlepatterns.com, and I will share this with you. And all of these patterns are free to download. And they work in Photoshop, and they're seamless. So they're already set up as a pattern for you, which is really, really awesome. So I'm going to download this one just to show you how to use it. Unzip it. And and bring it into week 1. Oh, this is what I mean. See, I don't have my PNG file set up to open in Photoshop, so it opened it up in preview. So I'm just going to drag it into over Photoshop and open it up. All right. So you open this up in Photoshop, and what you're going to do is you're going to go to Edit, Define Pattern, and it's going to grab the entire back of this entire image, and it's going to name it. You can name it whatever you want. You can leave it what it is named. Just hit OK. Now that is a pattern that is set that can be used anywhere. So I can go back in here, and I can do a Command Z on filling with that pattern, or the last thing I did was deselect it. So let me see. Magic wand, there we go. And I'm going to go to Edit. Actually, I'm going to do one other thing. I'm going to make one more new layer with that selection. I'm going to name it Pattern. I'm going to put it on this selection. You'll see why. So I'm going to go to Edit, Fill. I'm going to Pattern. I'm going to find that pattern I just added. Inspiration Light. There it is. I'm going to hit OK. And you'll see there it is, all nice and patterned in. And what if I want to see like the background coming through just a little bit? I'm going to change the opacity on this to 80. Maybe even less. Maybe 50% or 60%. There we go. And I'm going to change that gray that I just have. See that gray to a gradient. So it's already selected, but let's say it wasn't selected. Again, I can go and I can select inside of that gray. I'm going to go to my gradient tool, which is right here. And I'm going to double click, and I can either pick one of these presets or I can make one. And I want to make one. So I'm going to click on this color, double click, and I'm going to make it the first color, the color of her bow. And then the second color, oops, okay. I'm going to make kind of that silvery color. Zoom in a little. Silvery gray. I'm going to say okay. Now you'll notice that it looks like there's a very weird opacity going on here. And that's because this opacity right here is set to 0 and this one's set to 100. So it's kind of fading to nothing. I want to set them both to 100. And I'm going to click and drag. Let me turn off the pattern. So you can see if I click from the top down, it gives me from the peach to the gray. If I click this way, the peach is now down here. I can go this way. It goes from peach to gray or up and down. So you can kind of do, kind of mess around with it. Like I can do something like this. The shorter you go, it's less seamless. I'm going to do that. And then that pattern's overlaying it. I'm going to bump it back up to 100. And I'm going to try one of these. I'm going to try darken. Nope. Multiply. Nope. Yes. That's a good one. So on multiply, it's kind of showing through. And it's just making the outlines darker, but it got rid of that white. So that's kind of cool. And I'm going to turn back on her pumpkin pie. And I think the P's getting a little bit lost here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a drop shadow to it. So I want to select that layer, and I'm going to go down to this FX, which stands for effects, and click, and I can add a drop shadow. So this is kind of a lot of stuff, but it just kind of goes to show you all of the different things that Photoshop can do. So I'm going to set my drop shadow to multiply, 80%. You can kind of mess around with the distance, see how it moves. If I have it back at 0, it kind of goes all the way around all the edges. The spread gets a little bit bigger. And then the size gets bigger or smaller. That's good. There we go. So that's kind of coming together. And yeah, so I'm kind of liking this. So I want to save my Photoshop version, my PSD file, because I want to, you know, in case if I ever want to change out the type, I can, or in case if I want to change out the pattern, I can, or maybe I want to change out the background color, I can. You know, I have a lot of different options of what I can do. So I want to make sure I save that PSD file. But I also need to make myself a JPEG file and to upload as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a file, save as. I'm going to name it the same exact thing, but you'll notice how it leaves off the .psd. I'm going to change it from Photoshop down here to JPEG. Now it's named the same exact thing but .jpeg, so it's not going to override that file. I'm going to hit save, and you can leave it as none, image quality 12, and hit OK. So when I open up my JPEG, you can kind of see the difference. And you can also see why you need to save that native file. I only have one layer, one background, so I can't select anything and change it. That's why I need this PSD file. So you can see, like, imagine, you know, I don't have my text anymore. I can't turn on the text file to alter the text and then do the same thing again. I only have just this background. So that's why it's so important to make sure that you save those native files, because you're going to find a time where you're going to need to make some edits. So I've got both of my file types. I'm going to close this. I'm going to close this one. If it asks you if you want to save your changes, make sure you always save. Unless if you've done something and you're not sure if you want to save it. So you've now finished your work on time. So you're going to get 24 points right there just for that. Oh, we missed this. I missed a step right there. Hold on. It's like I feel like I'm missing something. I'm going to start over from my PSD file. So what I want to do is I need to save this down to 72 DPI for my JPEG. You can leave your PSD file at 300 DPI, that's fine. And this is how you're going to do this. So save that PSD file. You know you have it saved. Go to File, Save As. Do the JPEG again. Make sure you change the drop down. And we're going to open up that JPEG file. Make sure I'm in the right one. I'm going to close out my PSD file just so, because when I have two files that look alike, I don't want to get yourself screwed up. You can go Image, Image Size. And right here where it says Resolution, you're going to change that to 72. Make sure it stays at 9 inches and 4 inches. If you change it to 72 and it makes this larger, which you might have resample unclicked. So you'll notice if I did 72 and it changed it to 37.5, just hit cancel and do it again and go image size and make sure you have resample clicked and change it to 72. And that'll leave it as 9472 DPI. And hit OK. And you'll notice, see how small that is now? You can definitely see why 72 DPI, you can't go back up to 300. It'll pixelate it. And then hit save. So now we have the 72 DPI JPEG, and we still have our 300 DPI PSD file. So you're going to upload both of those. So we have it's 4 inches high by 9 inches wide, 20 points for that. Saved as a JPEG, uploaded the PSD file as well. I used a wide variety of tools So I use the text tool, I use the eraser tool, I can tell I use the lasso tool, the magic wand tool, I use the gradient tool. I use a whole bunch of tools to make this, you know, I have an image in there, and it's 72 DPI. So make sure that you're following along with the rubric. The rubric will tell you where you're going to get your points and where you're going to miss your points. So just make sure that you're double checking. And then you're going to go to submit assignment. So you'll be able to submit 2 files. So you're going to choose a file. Again, this is where knowing where your files are located makes it easier. Week 1 assignment. So I'm going to grab that JPEG first. And then we're going to click add another file. And we're going to upload that PSD file. And then I can put in a comment like here, this is my assignment for week 1. Please let me know if there are any errors. And thank you. Something like that. And then you would just click submit assignment. And that'll shoot your assignment up to me for me to grade. So again, just make sure you're double checking all of your work against that rubric. There's a rubric for every single assignment. And then once you finish that, you can go in and you can take the quiz for week 1. There's 7 questions. It's worth 50 points, and you have a time limit of 60 minutes. So click on Save Answers periodically while you're working to save your answers. And when you're finished, click on Save Answers and then click on Submit for Grade. So make sure you remember to do both of these, the assignment and the assessment and your discussion for this week, and you will be good to go. So before we end for tonight, I just want to point out that because of the winter holiday, we are going to have a break after week 3. And then we will be out through New Year's Day. Coming back on New Year's Day, we will have our week 4 live session on New Year's Day because it is week 4. I don't want to push everything off a day, so that way you guys have as much time to kind of watch the session and get your work in. So I will be reminding you of this a couple of times throughout the mod, although who really needs to be reminded that they have a vacation coming up? Not me. All right, so that is kind of a quick walkthrough of how to make yourself a wallpaper design. Again, make sure you're watching the extra videos on Photoshop. It'll kind of help you to kind of get a lay of the land. Make sure that you are doing everything you need to do regarding the pre-assessment to get your Adobe all set up and get yourself going. If you're running into any problems, please make sure you're communicating with me via email. And if you have any questions or you want some extra tutoring, please come to the multi-session tomorrow. You'll get in there the same way you got in for the live session. Are there any questions I can answer before we end tonight? I know we went over a ton of stuff. And if not, again, I hope to see everybody tomorrow during our multi-session. And I hope you guys all have a great night. Yes, this is recorded. What I end up having to do is I have to end the recording, and then it has to kind of process itself, and then I have to upload it to YouTube. So as soon as all of that is done, I will post it in the announcements with my slides, and I'll post it in the live session. So you'll be able to see it both places. It'll probably be best for you to access it through the announcements, just so that way you have the link to the slides as well. Yeah, so again, if you have any questions, please make sure that you're coming to the multi-session tomorrow. And if not, I hope to see everybody next week as well. You know, really push yourself this week. Have some fun with this assignment. You know, it's kind of like a free-for-all. Like, you know, do what you want. Make yourself a great background wallpaper, and I can't wait to see that. Yes, that is completely fine. I will end the recording right now so that way I can talk to you.